the Everything But Politics podcast.
We're live. Episode 110, Everything But Politics, Arizona Basketball Edition. Joined by fellow alum and friend of the show, Chase Zickerman, and ESPN radio host and writer for the Arizona Daily Star, Justin Spears. Justin, it's great to meet you, brother. Welcome.
What's up, guys? Glad to be a part of the podcast.
It's our pleasure. And you know what, Justin, in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of Arizona basketball journalism, this is rather historic. You know, Big 12 hoops, Big 12 everything, but Big 12 hoops has been circled on the calendar more so than the others. And, you know, you've been scouting it more so than we have. Is this Big 12 as daunting as they say it is?
Absolutely, because Arizona is ranked in the AP top 10. They're
Yes.
top 10 team in the country, yet they're fifth in the Big 12 poll. So put that into perspective. Like, even though Arizona is dubbed as one of the top teams in all of college basketball, as they should, right? I think this team is absolutely loaded. Probably the deepest team that Tommy Lloyd has had during his time at Arizona. But I think that this conference, I mean, when you look at Kansas, who's coming into this season as the number one team in the country, they have one of the best players in the country in Hunter Dickinson. You look at Iowa State, Houston, Baylor, and then even the teams behind Arizona, like Kansas State is going to be a really good team. BYU and their new coach that they got from the Phoenix Suns, they're starting to really open up the bankroll and start getting their NIL program going. And I see BYU as a program that's on the rise. And I just think that the Big 12 right now is the best conference in college basketball. I was looking at ESPN's top 100 players, and they have 20 players from the Big 12 in ESPN top 100, and a couple of them are coming from Arizona. So, you know, for Arizona, as they get ready for this post Pac-12 era, and I'm letting you guys know because you guys have been following Arizona basketball for a while, and you guys are fans of U of A hoops, but I'm just telling Arizona fans now, those days of Arizona winning 51 games at McKale Center, like consecutively, and having one of the longest winning streaks in college basketball, those days are over, right? I think now you're starting to see on a weekly basis teams come in that could beat Arizona. So I just tell Arizona fans, get ready, because this is going to be a very tough college basketball league. Now, it could hurt seeding, right? Maybe you see Arizona go in as a 3, 4, or 5 seed rather than a 1 or 2 seed. But I think this is going to be better for Arizona because this league is going to absolutely toughen them up. And, you know, Mike Tomlin always talks about iron sharpens iron, right? And I just think that right now, if Arizona goes up against these Big 12 teams, they're going to be battle tested for the NCAA tournament. And so and maybe that helps them out against these double digit seeds. Because if you look in over the years recently, Arizona, when they lose in the tournament, it's mostly because the team is just tougher than them. I mean, they lose to these double digit seeds because these double digit seeds just come in and kind of clobber Arizona and they out physical them. They are just are a tougher team. And so I think this year, with this crazy non-conference schedule that Arizona has, which I'm sure we'll talk about, also the Big 12 schedule against all of these loaded teams, there's not going to be a point in the season where Arizona just plays a bunch of cupcakes. They're going to be battle tested pretty much every step of the way, and I think that's going to get them better for March.
Well, you just mentioned, the transition from last year's team to, being that high expectation and losing, and, Clemson obviously in March. Here we are about 6-7 months later. How has that team evolved into what we're going to see with this 2024-2025 team?
Well, you lose a handful of guys, Pelle Larsson and Keshad Johnson. They're down with the Miami Heat. I think it's super cool that they're teammates now in the NBA.
Agreed.
And Oumar Ballo, that's a big loss. And I'll never forget when I first saw Oumar Ballo play, he struggled to get up and down the court. Like, he was huffing and puffing and was so gassed and looked out of shape. And I wondered, man, I don't know if this guy's going to last long. I mean, he may not last as a college basketball player. And then he turned out to be this dominant force and a guy who got in better shape, was a great rebounder, a great defensive player, and he really thrived under Tommy Lloyd. And I was really happy to see his progress as a player over the last couple of years. But, there was a point in time where, Tommy looked at the guys that he has. You have Mo Crevis, you have all these other players that are available for Arizona. And I think there was kind of like a mutual parting of ways for Oumar in the program. It's kind of like, hey, Oumar, you have graduated now. Go be yourself. You don't need us anymore. And so I think it's really cool that Oumar landed at Indiana, is going to play for Mike Woodson. And there's a possibility that Arizona plays against the Hoosiers in the Battle for Atlantis Invitational. It could be set up to where they play against Oumar or maybe even Gonzaga. But I think losing Oumar that's a big loss. Kylan Boswell too. I mean, he took a big step back as a sophomore last season, but I still view that as a loss. So you lose those guys, but man, you add in some really good transfers in Trey Townsend, who was at Oakland, is a guy that's going to fill up the box score, is a great rebounder, a great scorer, can shoot the ball too, is a versatile guy, and is going to be one of Arizona's better players this year. I really like Toby Awaka off the bench as like that Dennis Rodman physical defensive type of role. I think he's going to be a fan favorite for a lot of Arizona fans this year. And, I also like, man, the freshmen that they added too. I think Carter Bryant, when it's all said and done, is going to have the longest NBA career out of all of those guys. And I think it says a lot about his maturity that, he's a McDonald's All-American, and I mean, a guy that's going to be playing in the NBA for a while, 5-star player. I mean, he could start at a lot of different programs in college basketball, but he decides, you know what, I'm going to go and be a bench player at Arizona. And, you're going to see his development happen a lot quicker than, let's say, a guy like Kylan Boswell. And also, Kylan was dealing with a foot injury too. But I think in the early goings, you're going to start to see Carter Bryant. You're going to be like, okay, that's why this guy is one of the best freshmen in all of college basketball. So I talk about the newcomers and the acquisitions, but I didn't even mention anything about the returning players, which I think is so huge, right? Caleb Love was such a great player, was a great scorer last season, averaged, I think, about 18 points per game, was the Pac-12 Player of the Year, was a solid piece for Arizona. And then you saw the drop-off. Like there something happened towards the end of the regular season. I think it was maybe the USC game where he went like 1 for 10 from the field. And from that game on, Caleb Love, it's kind of like in golf, you have the yips, right? You think you're doing everything right, but damn it, I can't hit the ball. I don't know what's going on right now. That's what Caleb Love was experiencing in the latter part of the regular season and also the NCAA tournament. I think he shot like 20% from 3-point range, which he was just laying more bricks than HSL properties out here in Arizona, man. But I think that Caleb Love being able to redeem himself and coming back and having another season at Arizona, I think is going to be very exciting. And I think with the players that are also coming back, like KJ Lewis, who I think is going to, man, I don't want to go as far as saying he's going to have like a Benedict Mathurin type of jump.
Oh boy.
But when
maybe
one thing about Ben though was when Ben was a freshman, he was a guy that was coming off the bench for Dalen Terry and then was slowly implemented into the starting lineup. And we didn't have high expectations for him as a sophomore. Then boom, he blew up into this lottery pick. I'm not going to say that KJ Lewis is going to make that kind of jump, but I think you're going to see a pretty significant jump from him now that he's been elevated into the starting lineup. And then Jaden Bradley taking over the point guard role. I mean, he did what he did to Kylan Boswell is what Kylan Boswell did to Kirk Kriisa. And after a year, just took the job from him. And I get it. He's a great defensive player, can get you blocks, can get you steals. He never felt like a liability out on the court. Like Kylan Boswell, he wasn't like the ultimate liability, and you're like, oh my gosh, get this guy out of here. But it also felt like a lot of times when he was in the game, it felt like 4-on-5. When Jaden Bradley was in the game, you really felt his impact, especially on the defensive end. So I think that backcourt with Caleb Love, KJ Lewis, and Jaden Bradley, I think those guys are going to carry the load for Arizona. And I'm really excited to see what this front court is going to do with Mo Krievis coming back. He's dealing with a foot injury right now, but once he gets, working back into the lineup and gets back into the starting rotation, I think he's going to make a big jump from last year to this year. And then, a wild card that I'm actually really interested in watching is Henry Vasar. Henry Vasar was this highly touted ESPN top 100 recruit coming out of Estonia, I think. And people were dubbing him as like, he is the next great European prospect. Like, look out for this guy. I mean, he was getting more love coming out of high school than Lauri Markkanen. And
I
Lauri
didn't know
Markkanen,
that. Yeah.
yeah, Lauri Markkanen, I mean, he originally had like a 2-year plan when he came to Arizona, and then he rose to becoming a lottery pick, and they're like, okay, this guy needs to go play in the NBA. Henry Vasar, I thought was like, oh man, he might be a guy. And was starting to, be a part of the rotation, and then really fell off. And then last year he like broke his elbow at like a charity event, something like that. And that was it. We didn't see Henry Vasar last year. I don't want to overreact because it is exhibition games, right? But I think Henry Vasar looks like a guy that's going to see the court quite a bit this season. So like I said, man, I think this is Arizona's deepest team. Under Tommy Lloyd, the Wildcats have really used 7-man rotations. I think this is a rotation that can get anywhere from 9 to 10 deep.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the deepest team, maybe since me and Merrick's senior year, that team that went on to lose to Houston in the Sweet 16. One thing I wanted to ask, how do you think this team kind of differentiates itself from last year? Obviously they were 2 seed. They went to the Sweet 16. Pretty good team. What is the realistic expectation for this roster?
Man, that's so tough because I don't even know what to expect out of the Big 12 this year. And I also, need to see there. Like I said, there's a lot of wild cards, right? Like Henry Vasar, I can laud him all I want for what I saw in exhibition games, but he could also fall off too. I'm really curious to see how Carter Bryant develops as a freshman. So the newcomers and how they develop, I think will certainly tell how the season is going to go. But I just think that the non-conference schedule coupled with the Big 12 schedule, again, I think that's going to be the type of things that just get these guys tougher. And going up against Clemson, even when the shots aren't falling, if you could play tough defense, if you could stop the other team from scoring, even when you get in ugly games, I think that's what's going to carry this Arizona team. That was one thing that was really so special about the team that you were referring to that lost to Houston. Even like in certain moments when things got really ugly, Arizona always played winning basketball. And I think that if the Wildcats can figure out a way to just toughen up a little bit, I think they're going to go far in the tournament. And plus, I also think that Caleb Love, the biggest thing about his progression as a basketball player, even though he's been playing at basketball for so long, going back to his time at North Carolina, I think for him, he has to trust the other guys. I think he has to not rely on putting up a bunch of shots and feeling like he's got to be the guy that takes over the moment. We saw that a lot last season towards the end. And I think this year you're going to see a noticeable increase in Caleb Love's assists.
Justin, it appears the expectations have changed since Tommy Lloyd has entered the building. Is it fair to say in the 4th season now it's championship or bust?
I wouldn't say it's championship or bust, but you got to get to the Final Four because that's all what Arizona fans are judging you by. When you look at the Sean Miller era, while there was a lot of success, while he sent a lot of players to the NBA and brought in a lot of talent and kept the Arizona tradition going, we always look at Sean Miller as the guy who was right there and couldn't break through. Like, damn you, Frank Kaminsky. Damn you, Sam Decker, for those 2 games for Wisconsin. And I think Kemba Walker, too. So Kemba Walker, Frank Kaminsky, Sam Decker, those 3 guys are the reason why Sean Miller's never able to get to a Final Four. But, man, I'll never forget the 2017-18 season when the FBI scandal hit the program, right? And I'll never forget when Sean Miller was scrutinized and was under the microscope. And, when ESPN came out with that story about him allegedly discussing a $100,000 payment to DeAndre Ayton, like Arizona basketball was put under a negative light. But
Totally.
man, so many Arizona fans came to defend Sean Miller. And like, I get it, man, because that's their guy, right? He's the reason why Arizona had championship expectations at that point in time. But I found it very interesting that the same Arizona fans who were protecting him during the season were also calling for this man to get fired the second they lost to Buffalo in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So like Arizona fans, they're like, hey, we don't care that you cheated, but don't you dare lose an NCAA tournament basketball game. So yeah, this is a results-based profession. And I think right now, the big step for Tommy Lloyd, get yourself established in the Big 12. They're the new kids of the block. They're no longer the big bad boys of the Pac-12. They're the newbies, and they have to earn their keep. And they got to go up against the Kansas. Like Ric Flair said, in order to be the man, you got to beat the man. So I think right now in year one, you got to focus on beating those teams like Kansas, Houston, Iowa State, establish yourself as one of the top dogs in the conference. And then once you get to that NCAA tournament, man, you got to get to that Final Four. I think right now, all Arizona fans, they just want to get to the Final Four. And I think if Tommy Lloyd can get to the Final Four, Arizona basketball fans can kind of take a big, deep breath and be like, okay, we got to that point. But you know what? Once they get to that Final Four, all bets are off. And I think this is a team that's definitely capable of winning a national championship. But I think expectation, just get to the big dance in the Final Four.
Well, Justin, there aren't many people who are as familiar with Arizona basketball than yourself. Hypothetically speaking, let's say if you were on Tommy's coaching staff, what are some things that you would like to see change that have maybe been a problem for them in the last couple of years?
Oh man, that's a really interesting question. As far as like I said earlier, I think just get these guys to toughen up a little bit. I think that while Azuolas Tubelis was a really good player at Arizona, there were times where on the defensive end he was a little bit soft, and that's really what led to Arizona losing during Azuolas's last game. And he was even kind of bad offensively in that game against Houston in the Sweet 16. But Azuolas Tubelis and his struggles on defense really impacted Arizona because Azuolas Tubelis is the best player. You can't have your best player be a defensive liability. And sure enough, they bring in a guy like Keshad Johnson last year, who is kind of a different player than Azuolas Tubelis, but for some reason, the team just looked better with a player like Keshad Johnson in that role than what we saw when Azuolas Tubelis was that guy. So I would say that's probably the only thing that I would change. And hey, they brought in Toby Awaka, who's a really tough player. And I think he's going to bring that toughness and that grit coming off the bench. And yeah, I would say that's pretty much the only thing that I would change with Arizona basketball over the last few years. Because I think really, Tommy Lloyd has done a fantastic job. He took an Arizona team that was dealing with COVID and all that from the year prior. They didn't even go to the NCAA tournament because of the self-imposed postseason ban. And no one had expectations for Benedict Mathurin. No one really had expectations for Dalen Terry. And these guys became NBA players right in front of our eyes. And so from that point on, Tommy Lloyd set the standard the rest of the way. And now Arizona fans, after a few years into this thing, man, they're clamoring to get back to that Final Four.
Well said.
Right. And Justin, we talk about all the success that Tommy Lloyd's had on the court and being able to bring in these transfers like a Keshad Johnson and everything like that. One thing that Arizona fans that I've been hearing is, he hasn't been able to land a top recruiting class. Do you think he's a bad recruiter, or has he just not had a fair opportunity yet?
And see, that was the narrative when he first got to Arizona. It was like, oh, he could only recruit the international guys. He had to do that at Gonzaga because Gonzaga was Gonzaga and they were a developing program.
Right.
You can't go tell Carter Bryant at that time, right, in the 2000s, hey, come to Spokane, Washington and play for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Come play at the Kennel. We got a crazy student section, but that's pretty much all we got. So Tommy Lloyd had to zig when everyone was zagging. rather than going to these camps and showcases that have all these, 5-star prospects, he's like, let me go out and get the good international guys. And you can go down the list of all the great European prospects, even Canadian prospects that Tommy Lloyd was able to get to Gonzaga. And then when he comes to Arizona, people are like, okay, is he going to do the exact same thing? But you also have to think Jack Murphy and Sean Miller, they got international players towards the end of Miller's tenure, right? That's how they got Azuolas Tubelis. They got Lauri Markkanen and Dusan Ristic and all these other great European players. And so, Tommy Lloyd, I think, wanted to make sure that his international roots were still there because the game has grown significantly. I mean, you guys saw that in the Olympics. When the Dream Team was doing their thing in the 90s, I think they had 5 other NBA players on countries in the Olympics. And now this last year or this year, it was like in the dozens. It was just night and day different with the NBA talent that was in the Olympics. So the game has grown globally. And I know that people are going to criticize Tommy Lloyd and his staff for going after some of these international prospects. And hey, you know what? Some of them are not going to land. That's totally fine. We've seen that, right? Paulius Morauskas, Philip Borovicinen, like those kind of guys. I get it. Those prospects don't land, but you also have some other really good prospects that the Wildcats have been able to land. And you know what? Last time I checked, Carter Bryant is American. AJ Lewis is American. So you can say that he is not recruiting the top players in the country. Oh, he is. And I think now that he is established at Arizona, his name is well known in the coaching circles and also the recruiting areas. I think you're going to see, Tommy Lloyd continue to land more highly touted recruits. And, also the transfer portal has changed the game too, right? I think that, you're going to see a lot of American players that are in college basketball maybe making their way out to Tucson, Arizona.
Justin, go ahead, Merrick.
Yeah, I was just saying it's so funny, Justin, because I put myself in the shoes of one of these recruits, right? So we grew up in Indiana. Chase grew up in Philly.
Hoosiers.
So yeah, we grew up where it's cold weather. I visited Arizona in November of 2017. Got off the plane. It was cold in Chicago, Indiana. I was like, oh man, this is pretty fucking nice. And I just imagine these college kids, right? You're coming from New York. You're coming from Chicago. You're coming from Philadelphia, where it's cold and it's dark at 4 p.m. You get off the plane in Tucson. I just feel like Arizona has such an advantage in recruiting that doesn't get discussed, right? Is that a real thing? And if so, kind of elaborate on what that could do for the program in terms of recruiting.
We can't forget about the ladies in Arizona.
Absolutely. and you notice it, man. I always tell this story, and Rob Gronkowski has talked about it too. Like Rob Gronkowski, I'm not to switch sports on you guys here, but when Rob Gronkowski was being recruited by Arizona, like Mike Stoops and Arizona football was a rising program. It wasn't like a super well established. It wasn't going to bowl games. And Rob was also being recruited by Ohio State and some of the other greatest, great colleges that are in college football. And Rob went out to Arizona and was like, man, I'm coming here. and he told his dad, like, Dad, they got pool parties in February. Like, I am sold. And Rob Gronkowski, like, just wanted to come be Rob Gronkowski at Arizona and just party and live the life and play football. And that's exactly what he did. And I certainly think that the campus and the weather and the culture at Arizona plays a big advantage. And I think the fans too, right? Like, you go out to a Red Blue game and the arena is nearly sold out. Like, how many programs around the country can say something like that? So the fan base is very strong. Arizona basketball has a very strong tradition. And then, like you guys said, you come out to Arizona, you feel the sunshine on your skin.
Oh, man.
It feels nice, right? And also for some of these international guys too, right? You're coming over from Estonia, you're coming over from Finland and the Eastern Bloc of Europe, and you're like, man, I'm coming over from cold ass Siberia.
Yeah, dude, no doubt.
I'm gonna get used to this.
And I don't think, there's not much to compare it to because you go to like Scottsdale, Phoenix, which is beautiful, but no one gives a crap about ASU. Like in that Tempe, Scottsdale area, like when you come to Tucson, you could feel the U of A love and energy.
Well, and the one thing about ASU is that, yes, it's in Phoenix. You got the big city feel to it, but let's compare facilities, right? McHale Center is so much better than the bank. That's what they call it. Desert Financial Arena, formerly known as Wells Fargo Arena. No, seriously, the last times that I've been there, I'm like, this arena has not been updated. I was walking around the concourse, you have lights in certain areas flickering. It's just a very old school feel to the arena. And then you go into McHale Center and you're like, okay, this ain't quite like NBA style arena, right? But like, this is next level when it comes to college basketball. And the Richard Jefferson Gymnasium, like the money that's being pumped into Arizona basketball, right? You have a lot of high profile boosters and donors that are around the program. And that's something that ASU just does not have. I think they've tried to kind of milk their relationship with James Harden a little bit. And James Harden, whenever he comes to town and plays against the Suns, he'll go practice with them. But that's pretty much it for ASU. So I think even though, Tucson, Arizona isn't the big city, it's not as easily accessible as maybe a city like Phoenix when you're coming in from, other parts of the country. I still think it's just a little bit different and a little bit better, in my opinion. And I also think, too, we're talking about weather. I think Tucson weather's better than Phoenix because Phoenix doesn't get monsoon. I know that monsoon happens in the summertime and, it's not in season, but these guys are also here working out. They're over here training and doing all that stuff. And every day at like 4:00 during monsoon, it rains. So during the summertime, it's not hot as hell. You still get some showers from time to time. And yeah, I think Tucson weather is like the perfect weather out of all the places that I've been to.
That's an interesting recruiting tactic you just subtly did there. I see what you did there, Justin.
Hey man, like it gets up to 120 in Phoenix. It gets hot down here in Tucson, but like it also cools off from time to time when a shower comes in.
Right. And Justin, I'm curious, obviously, switching over to the Big 12 this year, do you think the travel differences compared to the Pac-12 will have an impact on the team or these kids at all, or is it really a non-factor?
Yeah, it's going to be different because before it was the Thursday, Saturday pairings.
Yep.
And now you're going to get games on Mondays and Tuesdays. And that's going to be a little bit different.
It's good for us. It's good for us consumers.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Absolutely. And I also think for Arizona players, they're going to quickly understand that when they go to opposing teams' arenas, it's not going to be like the days when you're playing against Cal and Stanford, where if you go on a run, you hear maybe U of A chants because there are a lot of Arizona fans there. When you're going into Fog Allen Fieldhouse, when you're going to Ames, Iowa, heck, even Houston, like they have a strong fan base at home, Baylor and Waco, like you're going to get your Arizona fans to show up, but it's not going to be like what Kirk Cousins called walk into your trap, take over your trap.
Yes,
it's not going to be any of that type of stuff because these fan bases, they care about their teams. And so those days of Arizona going on a run and you hearing U of A chants on the broadcast, I think those days are over with. So it's going to be a really interesting transition because Arizona fans are very passionate. They travel well, but this is a different beast. And also too, there may not be a lot of Arizona fans at these arenas because if you think about Pac-12 country, Los Angeles, Seattle, the Bay Area, heck, even like the Portland, Oregon area, these are areas that have a very strong contingent of Arizona alumni. So those guys aren't going to be able to go see their Cats as much as they used to. I don't know what the alumni base is like in Texas or Iowa or Kansas or that part of the country, but I'd imagine it's not as strong as the West Coast states.
That's an interesting point you make. And you make a good point with that Thursday, Saturday, right? You kind of waited beginning of the week for Arizona to play, and then they'd play a game at Colorado, Saturday at Utah. So now, they fly to Ames, Iowa. They fly to West Virginia. when you talk to the players and you get to know them and like kind of their personal lives, does that like affect, your personal life, school, or is all that kind of like accounted for when you're an Arizona basketball player?
I think all that's accounted for when you're an Arizona basketball player. These guys have the best resources in the world. I mean, in college sports, in the guys, the academic counselors, the people working at the Cats Academic Center, like they're going to be in tune with their academics. I don't think that's going to be a significant drop off, or I mean, if it has any effect at all. But I do think that it's going to be weird playing games on Mondays and Tuesdays, and then you're getting back on Wednesdays. Or I mean, I think they charter, so they're going to be getting back like late Tuesday nights or Mondays or wherever they got to travel. But yeah, I honestly, to be honest with you, I don't think it's going to have any effect at all for
How
Arizona
many?
basketball.
How,
It is going to affect, I will say, the Olympic sports. I do think that this travel
interesting.
is going to affect sports like baseball, like softball, because you got to think about these sports. They play series. So when you got to go play
Right.
UCF down in Orlando, you're not just going into Orlando, flying in, playing your game, and then dipping out. You're going to Orlando. You're staying there for
Going
a
to
few
Disney
days.
World.
So, how is that going to impact Arizona and some of those smaller sports? That's going to be interesting to see.
But
Justin-
in basketball, how many games are there in conference? 20?
20, yes.
So what are you expecting with the 20 game in conference schedule? Like 12 and 8, 13 and 7, or am I looking too low?
16-4.
16-4.
Yeah.
I would say that's a
All right. And
So-
Justin, I want to have a little fun here. Let's talk about. We'll go through all the conferences and then we'll give some predictions because this is going to be released on the Monday when the season starts.
sure.
We'll come back to this video around March Madness and see how good your predictions are.
Oh boy.
All right,
Okay, high takes.
we got to start in the Big 12 then. Who wins the Big 12?
Oh boy.
Let's
Well,
do
also,
the
we should clarify. Is this the
in-season and
tournament?
both.
Okay.
Both.
Okay.
Let's do both.
For the tournament, I'm gonna go with Kansas because it's in Kansas City.
Okay.
Arizona's the fans that came out to Vegas for the Pac-12 tournament. I mean, imagine that for Kansas, but on steroids, right? I was actually
Right.
I was just in Kansas for the Arizona Kansas State football game in Manhattan, and I flew into Kansas City, got in my rental car, and drove to Manhattan, which is about 2 hours away, and I had to drive through Lawrence, which is 40 minutes away from Kansas City. It's like right there. So there's two sports that are kings in Kansas City. Oh, balloons coming up. That was a cool effect.
We need more
There's
of those.
There's two sports that are kings, and it's not the Royals. Like when I was in Kansas, I probably saw one hand the number of people wearing like Kansas City Royals garb, like a hat or a shirt. They don't really mess with the Royals, and I'm like, wait, aren't these guys about to get ready for the playoffs? And they
Right.
just don't care. They're all about the Chiefs and Kansas Jayhawks basketball. So I'm gonna go with Kansas to win the tournament just because it's in their backyard. And oh man, I can't believe I'm gonna do it, man. I'm gonna go with the Wildcats to win the regular season. I think this is a deep team. I think that this is going to be a team that has more guys last year available. Like Henry Vasar is going to be available. I think he's going to have a more important role. I think Mo Crevis is going to be a stud there in the middle. And you also have, like I said, some rising freshmen. I didn't even mention Emmanuel Steffen earlier in the show, and Emmanuel Steffen is like the next Christian Coloco, in my opinion. So the Wildcats got some dudes, and I think that the Wildcats are going to win the regular season Big 12 championship. But man, it's all going to come down to those final stretch of games because the last few road games you got to go at Iowa State and at Kansas, and Kansas doesn't even come to Tucson. Tommy Lloyd said when I saw that schedule, I kind of smiled a little bit because the Big 12 was like, okay, you want to win the conference, you're going to have to earn it. And I think Arizona will definitely earn their stripes in year one. I got the Cats.
All right, let's go to the Big 10 now.
Oh, man, the Big 10. Oh, man.
Who?
Hoosiers.
I think I might have to go with the Hoosiers.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, as
Yes.
Hoosiers, they disappoint and disappoint and then disappoint a little more. I would be shocked if Mike Woodson is able to lead the Hoosiers. I'm not a believer in Mike Woodson and what they're building at IU personally. But
Right now
I
we're
don't know.
way more focused with the Coach Sig.
Oh, Signetti. Yeah, baby.
8-0.
But also, I think Purdue is the favorite to
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the Big Ten, of course, even without Zach Edey.
Is Michigan going to be back this year? They're so hit or miss. Michigan. They're all either really good or really nothing.
Well, right now in the Big Ten media poll, they are currently 9th. So they're right there in the middle. Don't sleep on
All right.
don't sleep on Illinois and the Fighting Kylan Boswells.
That's fair. And let's not forget about those former Pac-12 teams now in the conference
the
too.
Bruins. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so
Right.
My arch
definitely
rival,
changing up.
Nick Cronin.
Yeah, yeah. So what other conference we got? We got the ACC,
ACC,
also
yep.
with some former Pac-12 friends in Cal and Stanford.
Sorry, the Calgorithm is going to hate me for this, but man, Duke beat the brakes off of ASU. I mean, they beat them by nearly 60 points. Dude, Cooper Flagg.
Cooper Flagg, he's generational.
That's the guy right there, man. I mean, we're already talking about that guy playing for Team USA in a couple of years. So I got to go with Duke, man. These Blue Devils, I mean, the number 1 rated recruiting class in the country. Cooper Flagg is the best player in college basketball. Yeah, I got to go with Duke.
All right, what else? We got
We got the Big East.
in the SEC.
Oh, man. You know what? Well, with the SEC, I want to give it up to, oh, man.
I know who I like. I'm curious who you got here.
Arkansas?
Yep. Coach Cal.
Coach Cal in his first year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with Coach Cal in his first year with the players that they were able to get. I know they got a couple guys from Kentucky. As far as the Big East goes, I mean, I feel like this is kind of a no-brainer. The defending national champs and the UConn Huskies.
Yeah.
All right, so let's then make our way to the Final Four, your Final Four, and then who wins it all.
Oh my gosh, dude! You're asking me this question on October 30th.
That's why we're gonna pull this up in March, and we're gonna be look. Justin went 4 for 4. Arizona's in the national championship. They're playing blank, and he predicted this October 30th.
Oh man! All right,
That's brutal. That's brutal.
I feel like I'm obligated to do it, so I'll put Arizona as one of them.
There you go.
I did say that this is a Final Four or bust season for Tommy Lloyd. So I'll go with Arizona in the Final Four. I'll also go Duke. Oh, man. Kansas and UConn.
Not
right.
making much room there for some upsets, huh?
No.
I mean, when you get asked in October, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's pretty standard.
I'm not gonna be like, you know what? The Princeton Tigers. I really like those guys.
Florida Atlantic.
This is what's gonna happen. Justin, in March, you're gonna go, oh, I gotta fill out my bracket. Wait, I should listen to that podcast. I already picked my 4.
And just work from there.
Yeah.
But if you want me to go with an upset, let me go with a team that's not ranked. Let me go with the St. John's Fighting Rick Pitino's.
I like
All
that.
right.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love it. I love the Northeast basketball. Justin, speaking of out of Arizona, both myself and Merrick, since graduation, now live in South Florida, so we're a couple thousand miles away from Tucson. I'm curious what the energy and the buzz is like on campus and in Tucson in general around the basketball season, and kind of what the vibe is out there.
No, people are really excited about this basketball team. And I think they're also really excited about this basketball team because the football team isn't doing so well.
No.
With Arizona losing 4 straight games and starting the season 3-5, the season that had high expectations has not lived up to the hype. So Arizona fans are just kind of like, all right, Now time to
Yep, see
move
ya.
on to basketball. See ya. And I think honestly, you guys live in South Florida. The Wildcats are coming your way. They're going to go play UCF in Orlando here Saturday afternoon, or the time we're recording this. Sorry, last Saturday. But I think that oh my gosh, I totally lost my train of thought.
But with South Florida, the energy in Tucson, South Florida.
Oh, the energy and yes. So I think that if Arizona, depending the results of the UCF game, man, that's going to really determine Arizona's fans' decision to get on with the Arizona basketball bandwagon. Because if they pick up, loss number 6, oh boy, that's going to be tough for Arizona. So Arizona fans are already like reaching for the Arizona basketball bandwagon, but a loss to UCF, or any loss here in the next couple of weeks, I think with that Wisconsin game coming up, because that Wisconsin game is at the same time as Arizona versus Houston football. So, man, what is there going to be, like 20,000 people at Arizona Stadium, if that? Like, I really don't think that anyone is going to go to this football game. But yeah, the vibes are immaculate. They love Arizona basketball. They love Tommy Lloyd. I mean, heck, Tommy Lloyd is over here, having beers and having a good time with Mixed Master Mike from the Beastie Boys. And this is after the Red Blue game. Like, people love Tommy Lloyd. And Tommy Lloyd has also really embraced Tucson too. You see him at a lot of events. You see him marketing Arizona basketball. And so this community down here in the Old Pueblo, we are very lucky to have a guy like Tommy Lloyd leading the way as Arizona's basketball coach. So man, the excitement is real. A lot of people are pumped up for this U of A basketball season.
Let's fucking go. And Justin, with the season underway and, we got things in the swing of things, where can people find you, your show, your content, everything to stay informed for this Arizona basketball season?
Yeah, so as the Arizona football beat writer, I'm actually still rocking out the football season. So you can find all my work on U of A football at Tucson.com. We also have a mobile app. It's called the Wildcaster. If you're an Arizona basketball fan, you got to download it. My colleague, Bruce Pasco, who is the beat writer for U of A Hoops, he does a fantastic job covering this team and writes some incredible stories. So that Wildcaster mobile app is very handy for Arizona Wildcats fans. And my morning show that I do every single morning, weekdays from 7 to 9 a.m. over here in Tucson, it's called Spears and Ali. And my co-host, Ali Farhang, is a booster of Arizona basketball. His son was formerly a manager for U of A Hoops. He is one of the biggest Arizona basketball fans that I know. And so all season long, you're going to hear us talking about it. Spears and Ali on ESPN Tucson and the Spears and Ali podcast.
Awesome. And Justin, I just want to give you props real quick because this is our 110th episode. I know what goes into this, and for you to do it every single day is absolutely incredible. So major respect to you and Ali. Keep crushing it. Man. Can't wait to watch you guys this season. Thank you guys so much. Bear down. Let's fucking go.
Bear down. Woo! Thanks, guys.